Okay, good afternoon all. I'm Amit Kumar Shinde. I welcome you all for this today's session. In today's session, I am going to discuss aluminium and its alloys, then nickel and its alloys, lead and its alloys. Okay, first we will discuss the particular metal. Suppose if aluminium and its alloys we are starting, then we will discuss the general properties of the aluminium, and that properties will get reflected in the aluminum its alloys. And after that we will discuss the properties of nickel, and then some kind of types of the nickel alloys, then lead and lead alloys with some examples, okay, that we are going to discuss. Now I will start with the aluminium. So the first point in this will be properties of the aluminium, and automatically in that aluminium alloy all these properties will get reflected, or some changes may be there depending on the addition of the alloying element. Okay, and now the first we will start with the properties related to based on their structure, as these aluminium and their alloys has FCC crystal structure. Okay, simply aluminium has FCC crystal structure, that is face centered cubic crystal structure. Due to this, aluminium is soft, malleable, and ductile in nature. Now, uh, on this aluminium, you can easily perform different working operations to give them desired shape and size, or to manufacture desired shape component. And for this, we can use hot working processes or cold working processes, depending on our need or available equipments or arrangements with us. Now, the very important characteristics for this aluminium is it is light in weight, and it has very good thermal and electrical conductivity. Okay. Copper also has very good thermal and electrical conductivity. Then what is the difference between aluminium and copper? On the weight to weight basis, if you compare the aluminium and copper, then aluminium will carry more electricity than the copper, with the very lesser weight. Okay, it is light in weight, and it is very useful property. And the next property is the aluminium. You can easily, means you can form different alloys, and with the variable properties or different properties. It is easily you can alloy it with different alloying elements like silicon, copper. Here you can see silicon, copper, magnesium, manganese, zinc. Different alloying elements can be easily added in the aluminium to change some of its properties, or to modify its properties, or to improve its properties. Now, another very important property of this aluminium is aluminium has very good resistance to corrosion and oxidation. Okay, then how this corrosion resistance and oxidation resistance is improved in case of aluminium? Okay, when aluminium comes in contact with the that aluminium surface, or aluminium alloy surface come in contact with the air, it forms the aluminium oxide. Okay, aluminium oxide is nothing but Al2O3, and this Al2O3, it will be in the form of a thin film on the surface of that metal or alloy, and that thin film will protect the metal or alloy from the further corrosion or oxidation. Okay, this will aluminum Al2O3, that is alumina layer or aluminum oxide layer. It will act as a protective layer, and it improves the corrosion resistance as well as oxidation resistance. And the very important characteristic of this formed alumina is it is non-toxic in nature. Whichever film is formed of this alumina, it is non-toxic in nature. Hence, we are using the aluminium or their alloys in the food packaging. Okay, to manufacture in the food packaging. If you have seen suppose if you are eating different packaged foods, some chocolates are there. Then it is packed with the aluminum. Okay, aluminum and its alloys are there. Why we are using it? Because it is non-toxic. Okay, whichever oxidation may occur, then the formation of aluminum oxide will take place, and whichever alumina is formed, it is non-toxic in nature. That's why we are using them in the food packaging industries. Then the next property is aluminum has very low ductile brittle transition temperature. Okay, it has very low ductile brittle transition temperature. Now, what is ductile brittle transition temperature? It is a temperature at which ductile material changes its characteristics and it becomes brittle in nature. Okay, this is termed as a ductile brittle transition temperature, and particularly for this aluminum, its ductile brittle transition temperature is minus 40 degrees Celsius, approximately minus 40 degrees Celsius. Hence, we can use this property of aluminum in refrigeration industry or a refrigeration services or in cryogenic services. Okay, means for storing of the gases, can use this aluminum or their respective alloys. Then the next property of the aluminum, it is non-magnetic in nature and non-sparking in nature. Okay, we have if you have conducted the practical, that is spark test, we have conducted that practical, and in that we have observed that if you perform the grinding operation on the aluminum or its alloys, then no spark is generated during the grinding operation. Okay, and then the another important property of the aluminum is it has low neutron absorption coefficient, and it also has high reflectivity for heat and radiant energy. Then aluminum act as a powerful deoxidizer. And what is the meaning of deoxidizer? Deoxidizer means whichever oxygen is there, or suppose in case of some copper alloys, we are adding the other elements. Okay, if we in the previous session while studying the brass in Admiralty brass, we have discussed that sorry, in if we are adding the aluminum in the same, that what will happen, copper oxide will be formed. If suppose copper alloy is there, it will combine with the oxygen and copper oxide will be formed. Now to reduce this oxide formation, okay, due to copper oxide formation, ductility will get reduced. Then to reduce this oxidation, we are adding aluminum, and aluminum will act as a deoxidizer. Okay, it will stop the oxidation process of that particular or other elements. Okay, and now this particular or in simple word, you can see the we are reducing the oxygen here, eliminating or reducing the oxygen. And then that is the next property, can be used for grain refinement of copper or its alloys like brasses. Okay, this point we have discussed here. Whenever copper or their alloys are present, the copper will combine with oxygen and it forms copper oxide, and it reduces the ductility of the material. To avoid this, we are adding the aluminum. Okay, and it will act as a deoxidizer. Then some general properties, depending on the general properties, some general applications I have highlighted here. These are general applications of aluminum and their alloys. They are used for different cooking utensils. Okay, if you observe your kitchen, number of cooking utensils are there made up of aluminum. Okay, white, little whitish in color and lighter in weight, whichever utensils are there in kitchen that are manufactured with the help of aluminum. Then different kinds of combs, collar buttons, in different toasters, mixers, electrical conductors, food containers, then manufacturing of the paint, then nameplates, ashtrays, and flower pots, different coins. All these can be manufactured with the help of aluminum and their alloys. And aluminum and their alloys can also be used in transportation industry, in the manufacturing of bicycles, then motorcycles, different trucks, buses, then different marine vessels or aeroplanes. Because they are in this industry, different parts can be manufactured in transportation industry of these vehicles, because aluminum is very light in weight and it has very good corrosion resistance and oxidation resistance. Then aluminum and their alloys can be used for decoration purpose, okay, due to their very high or better corrosion resistance due to formation of that alumina layer. Then it can be used in refrigeration and cryogenic services. Already have explained this. Cryogenic services is nothing but, you can say that, storing of the gases at the low temperatures, very low temperatures, minus 40, minus 30 degrees Celsius temperature. Okay, and it has a very low ductile brittle transition temperature, that is up to minus 40 degrees Celsius. Hence, we can use aluminium in refrigeration and cryogenic services. Then another some specific applications of these aluminum and aluminum alloy, they can be used in the manufacturing of permanent magnets, then shape memory alloys and space alloys. Okay, use them in this different applications. We can manufacture permanent alloys. Okay, sorry, permanent magnets we can manufacture here. Then shape memory alloys and some space alloys. Okay. Now here, shape memory alloys, these are alloys that can be reformed, okay, deformed when cold, and they can regain their shape after heating. Okay, depending on the temperature conditions provided, they you can change their shapes. Okay, that's why these are shape memory alloys. They can be deformed when you can cool them, then again you can give their previous shape by providing heating. Okay, hence they are termed as memory alloys or shape memory alloys. Okay, then after this we will move towards some practical applications. Okay, practical applications. Okay, some practical uh, alloys of aluminium, and before that we will discuss some specific equilibrium diagrams related to that. Okay, now we have studied the general properties and general applications. Now here the alloys of aluminium. Now very commonly used alloy of the aluminiums are aluminium silicon alloys. Okay, ALSI alloys. Then we can use aluminium silicon copper alloys. Aluminium magnesium alloys are also there, and aluminium copper alloys are there. Okay, different alloys are present. Now here we will start with aluminum and silicon alloy. Now on the right side of your screen, I have added aluminum silicon equilibrium diagram. Now here, this is the initial curve which is visible to you. This whitish is the changed diagram. Okay, please refer it. This orange color diagram is your equilibrium diagram, initial equilibrium diagram, and we are doing some for altering the properties of some aluminum silicon alloys. We are doing one modification treatment or process. Due to that, this equilibrium diagram shifts, which is shown by this white curve. Okay, so this is the aluminum and silicon equilibrium diagram. Here you can see at this point. Okay, please refer or see the position of the cursor here. At this point, eutectic transformation occurs in this aluminum silicon alloy. On the x-axis, weight percentage of silicon is plotted, and on y-axis, temperature is plotted. And here, liquid phase is there. Here, alpha plus liquid. Here, alpha, and at this lower portion, alpha plus silicon, and towards this right corner, liquid and silicon. These are the phases present depending on different composition condition and temperature conditions. Now generally at this point, okay, this is the eutectoid transformation point, and its general temperature or eutectic transformation point. And this eutectic transformation occurs at 577 degrees Celsius temperature and 11.7% silicon. Okay. At this point, eutectic transformation occurs, and this liquid transforms to an eutectic mixture of alpha and silicon. In this eutectic composition is 11.7% silicon, and temperature, corresponding temperature is 577 degrees Celsius. Now, in this aluminum, as we have added this silicon, here you can see alpha plus silicon phase is there after eutectic transformation. This silicon will improve the corrosion resistance and oxidation resistance, and along with that, it also improves the fluidity of the metal or alloy. It improves the fluidity. Due to this fluidity, easily we can perform the casting operation on this aluminum silicon alloys. Okay, and another important characteristic of this aluminum silicon alloy is they have very low thermal expansion coefficient. Okay, very low thermal expansion coefficient. Now, on some aluminum silicon alloys, we are performing modification treatment. Okay, modification heat treatment by adding the sodium. Okay, sodium metal we are adding, and small amount is added in the range 0.005% to 0.015%. Sodium is added to do the modification of aluminum silicon alloys containing more than 8% silicon. Then why this sodium is added, or why we are modifying these aluminum silicon alloys? Now here we have discussed that as silicon percentage is increasing, it improves the oxidation resistance, corrosion resistance, and fluidity. But here the eutectic transformation occurs at this particular 577 degrees Celsius and 11.7% silicon. Then here this is eutectic aluminum silicon alloy. Okay, now if composition is less than this eutectic composition, then that alloy will be termed as hypoeutectic. Okay, this is 11.7% silicon. If alloy has less composition, then it will come in this category, that is hypoeutectic alloy. And if composition is more than, that is silicon is more than 11.7%, then it will come under the category of hypereutectic alloy. Okay, Now in hypoeutectic alloy, we have alpha phase and the silicon which is obtained after eutectic transformation. Okay, here alpha phase is there before eutectic transformation. Alpha, that is, you can say that as this alpha is separating before this eutectic transformation, this is proeutectic alpha, and this proeutectic alpha, or simply this alpha phase, is soft in nature. Okay, then it does not changes or affects the mechanical properties. uh, Soft, or you can say that as it is a solid solution, due to solid solution strengthening, some better tensile strength characteristics will be obtained with toughness or better ductility. Then if alloy is hypereutectic alloy, then in this hypereutectic alloy, before occurrence of this eutectic transformation, please see this horizontal line, before occurrence of this eutectic transformation, silicon is separated. This silicon is termed as primary silicon or proeutectic silicon because it is separated before occurrence of this eutectic transformation. Eutectic transformation occurs at this temperature, okay, this horizontal line, 577 degrees Celsius. And this silicon has separated before eutectic transformation. Hence, this silicon will be termed as primary silicon or proeutectic silicon. And this silicon, it will increase the brittleness in the material. Okay, as it is separated before eutectic transformation, it will remain at the room temperature conditions also. And due to this, what will happen? It increases the brittleness, hence tensile strength and the ductility is decreased. Okay, and to avoid this, we are doing the modification by adding the sodium metal in the range 0.005% to 0.015%. And due to addition of this sodium metal in the aluminum silicon alloy, what will happen? It will shift or it displaces the eutectic composition, okay, from 11.7 to 12.6%. And it also decreases the eutectic transformation temperature up to 452 degrees Celsius. Okay, here you can note that when modification is done, it shifts the eutectic composition to 12.6% silicon and eutectic temperature to 452 degrees Celsius. Okay, and due to this, what will happen? The formation of primary or proeutectic silicon is avoided. Okay, is avoided. And this modification treatment we can do in the hypereutectic alloys which contains up to 16% silicon. We can do this uh, modification treatment. Okay, and these questions may be asked in your competitive examination. Why the modification treatment is performed on aluminum silicon alloys and which metal is added? Okay, related to these questions may be there. And I have explained its answers. Okay, sodium is added and its percentage will be 0.0005 to 0.015%. And why it is added? And whenever higher silicon percentage is there, then it results in the formation of pro-eutectic silicon or primary silicon. And as it is coarse in nature, it will what will happen? It will reduce the mechanical properties like tensile strength or ductility, and it becomes material will become brittle in nature. Okay, and so to avoid this, we are adding sodium. So this is the aluminum silicon alloy, its equilibrium diagram and modification treatment on the aluminum silicon alloy. And this is done in alloys, aluminum silicon alloys containing more than 8% silicon. If silicon is less than 8%, no need to do the modification. Then some different aluminum silicon alloys. Some examples I have added here. Now, the aluminum alloys are basically designated or denoted by LM series. Okay, these are designated by LM series, and in this LM series, this LM series we have taken it from, these are according to the British standards. Okay, LM series, and this is designation is according to the British standards. Now, some examples I have highlighted, some examples and their properties. Aluminum alloys, their examples, properties and applications. Now, this is here you can see the first LM6. Okay, this is LM6 alloy. Now, this LM6 is aluminum silicon alloy containing 12% silicon and remaining or balance amount of aluminum. Then properties of this LM6, as only silicon is there, you can say that it has, this LM6 material has excellent fluidity. Then it shows less shrinkage during the solidification, and it has a very good corrosion resistance also. And due to these properties, this LM6 material can be used for doing the automobile castings such as water cooled manifolds, then jackets, motor housings, and different pump parts in chemicals and dye or pigment industries. Okay, for these, this LM6 is used. Then we will discuss now aluminum, silicon, and copper alloys. Now, why here we are adding the copper? Okay, here in this element, why we are adding the copper? Why we are adding the copper and decreasing the amount of silicon? Okay, copper is added to improve the machinability. Okay, as more amount of silicon, as more amount of silicon is there, okay, okay. Yes, in aluminum, silicon, and copper alloys. If you are having any queries, please let me know via chat box. Okay, now after discussing aluminum silicon alloys, aluminum silicon copper alloys are there. Here, what we are doing, we are decreasing the amount of silicon and we are adding copper. Okay, now in this LM2 is there, LM2. Now in this LM2, you can see clearly 10% silicon, 2% copper, and balance amount of aluminum is there. Then one more example I have added LM24 and LM4. These last two are different examples. Please take note. This LM8 and LM13. This is the example of means aluminum, silicon, and magnesium alloys are there. And then the last one, aluminum, silicon, nickel, copper, and magnesium. Other alloying elements I have added. So please take note, this LM2, LM24, and LM4. These are aluminum, silicon, and copper alloys. Then here you can observe clearly that if you compare it with LM6, I have decreased, or we are decreasing. Here, decreased silicon is there, and in addition of copper quantity, or copper is present in significant amount. Why here copper is added? Now we have decreased silicon, because due to more percentage of silicon, we can it has less machinability, and we can go for casting operations to get the desired shape and size. Now, with the addition of the copper, due to addition of this copper, machinability of that material or alloy will get improved. Machinability will get improved, and you can give the different shapes and sizes by using other processes also. You can use casting as well as other cold working or hot working operations to give them desired shape and size. But in this LM2, LM24, and LM4, due to addition of copper, the corrosion resistance is decreased. Okay, corrosion resistance is decreased. Now, to improve the corrosion resistance, we have added, or we are adding magnesium. Okay, small amount of magnesium is added in, and it is example, or it is shown by an example. This is aluminum alloy known by name LM8 and LM13. Okay, in this LM8, small amount of magnesium is added, LM8, LM25. Now, due to addition of this small amount of magnesium, they will show you better castability and better corrosion resistance due to the presence of this magnesium. And in this LM13, okay, in this LM13, nickel is also there. Nickel, copper, magnesium, all are present. Then what will happen? It will show the low thermal expansion coefficient and better bearing properties. Okay, hence these last LM13, it is used for manufacturing of different kinds of pistons. Okay, different kinds of pistons can be manufactured here with the help of this LM13. Then the next aluminum alloy is aluminum magnesium alloy. Okay, aluminum and magnesium alloys, and it is also known as magnesium. Okay, aluminum will be base metal and magnesium will be alloying element, and it is termed as magnesium. Then, or its example I have taken, different compositions may be there, LM5 and LM10. Okay, now this LM5, 5% magnesium, 0.5% manganese, and the remaining or balance amount of aluminum will be there. In LM10, 10% magnesium and remaining amount of aluminum will be there. Now, this aluminum and magnesium alloys, these alloys have very high resistance to the corrosion. Then their tensile strength, due to addition of manganese and magnesium, tensile strength is very high, and along with the tensile strength, they provide you very good, you can say that, ductility or machinability, and whichever product, final product is obtained, it will give you high polished surface in this aluminum magnesium alloys. And as these aluminum magnesium alloys has better corrosion resistance and good tensile strength, these are used in marine applications. LM5 is used in marine application, and specifically this LM10. This LM10 is used for aircraft, then manufacturing of different aircraft components, different automobile components, then in dairy equipments and architectural work. Whichever equipments are there having lighter weight, that are made from this aluminum and magnesium alloys. Okay, now in this aluminum and magnesium alloys, okay, during the casting process, okay, initially we are melting them, and we are doing the casting. Then during this, when that particular metals are in molten form, okay, when they are in the molten form, easily oxidation may occur. Okay, easily oxidation may occur, and different gases may get released, or they may get trapped in the form of defects in the final component. in this aluminum magnesium alloys. And to avoid this, small amount of beryllium is added in this aluminum and magnesium alloys. Then we will move towards the next aluminum alloy, that is aluminum and copper alloy. Okay, different, you can do the number of alloy, means you can use number of alloying elements and number of alloys can be manufactured. But here I am highlighting the important aluminum alloys. Okay, we have discussed aluminum silicon alloys, then aluminum silicon copper alloys, aluminum magnesium alloys, then aluminum copper alloy. Okay, now some examples of aluminum and copper alloy you can write here in the composition. LM11, it contains 4.5% copper, and a remaining amount or balance amount will be of aluminum. Then aluminum copper alloy, which is also known as duralumin. Okay, duralumin is there, and its composition will be like this: 4.5% copper, 0.5% manganese, and 0.5% magnesium. Okay, 0.5% manganese, 0.5% magnesium, and the remaining amount will be of aluminum only. Okay, now these aluminum copper alloys, that is duralumin or LM11, some common properties will be like this: they have very good shock resistance, then they have good tensile strength and hardness due to precipitation hardening. Okay, due to precipitation hardening, just try to remember that here tensile strength will be very high and hardness will be very high. Related to this precipitation hardening, I will add one session, or we will conduct one separate session on it. Okay, and better corrosion resistance will be provided by these aluminum and copper alloys. And these aluminum copper alloys are generally used for manufacturing of different aircraft castings. Okay, different components that can be used in the aircraft industry, you can say, and that are manufactured with the help of this aluminum copper alloys. Then the next aluminum alloy is Y alloy or LM14. Okay, now this Y alloy, it is designated by LM14, and its composition will be like this: 4% copper and 2% nickel, 1.5% magnesium, and balance or remaining amount will be of aluminum. Then this Y alloy, their specific property is they are having high strength. Okay, high strength even at elevated temperatures or higher temperatures, they will provide you very high strength, and easily you can perform casting operations or different rolling operations on this Y alloys to give them desired shape and size, and they will provide you very good corrosion resistance also. Now these Y alloys, these Y alloys or LM14 aluminum alloys, these are mainly used for manufacturing of pistons and cylinder heads of diesel and high duty petrol engines. Okay, diesel and high duty petrol engines, different pistons and cylinder heads are used, and that are manufactured with the help of these Y alloys. Okay, because they are having higher strength at elevated temperatures or higher temperature ranges also, and they will provide you very good corrosion resistance. Then we will the last aluminum alloy is Hinduminium. Okay, Hinduminium or RR350. Sometimes they can just provide you the symbol or its designation is RR350. Its name is Hinduminium, and this RR350, its composition will be like this: 5% copper, 1.5% nickel, and remaining or balance amount will be of aluminum with the addition of very small amount of other alloying elements like manganese, then titanium, then antimony. SB is antimony, cobalt, or zirconium. This hinduminum is also has very high strength at elevated temperatures and very good corrosion resistance. And due to addition of these other alloying elements, its creep resistance is increased. Its creep resistance is increased, and due to this addition of these alloying elements at higher temperatures also, you can use these alloys or component manufactured from these alloys. Hence these hinduminum are used in aero engines and other applications, service applications, where temperature, working temperature is up to 300 degrees Celsius. We can use these hinduminum alloys. Okay, different components will be manufactured that we can use here because they provide you high strength, corrosion resistance, and creep resistance also in the higher temperature ranges. So in this way, we have completed this aluminum and aluminum alloys. In this, we have discussed aluminum, their properties, then specific applications of the aluminum and their alloys. After that, we have discussed aluminum silicon alloy along with their equilibrium diagram and how the modification treatment is conducted. And then aluminum, silicon, copper alloys, and how we are doing the modification by adding some nickel and magnesium depending on the properties needed. Then aluminum magnesium alloys or magnesiums, then aluminum copper alloys. In that we discussed LM11 and duralumin. Then Y alloy and hinduminum, which is denoted by RR350. We have discussed them with their composition properties and applications. If you are having any doubts related to this aluminum or their alloys, you can mention that in the chat box. Okay. And then we will move towards the next alloys, that is lead and tin alloys. Okay, lead and tin alloy. If you are having any query, please mention that in the chat box. Okay, now we will start the lead and tin alloy. Okay, lead and tin alloy, and in this lead and tin alloy, how to remember this? Different solder materials are there. Okay, different solder materials. If you have seen while joining different wires or your TV wires or electrical wires, that soldering operations they are performing, that different solders are manufactured, that soldering materials are manufactured with help of this lead tin alloy. Okay, lead tin alloy or lead antimony alloy. Okay, antimony is denoted by SB, PBSN or PBSB alloys, and generally we are using lead tin. Then during the joining of your electrical wires or during joining of different pipes, okay, these lead and tin alloys are used. Now before starting this lead and tin alloys and discussing their equilibrium diagram and their specific properties, first we will discuss the properties of the lead. Okay, here lead, which is denoted by this PB symbol, this lead, it is or it has FCC crystal structure very much similar to aluminum and copper. Okay, hence it is soft, malleable, and ductile in nature. This lead is also soft, malleable, and ductile. But what is the difference from copper and aluminum in this lead? How it differentiates the lead? This lead has a very low melting point. Okay, its melting point is very low, approximately 325 to 327 degrees Celsius is its melting point. And if you compare them with the copper, or you can compare them with the aluminum, it has a very high density, and its electrical or its thermal conductivity is very low. Okay, very low electrical conductivity or thermal conductivity, then high coefficient of thermal expansion. Okay, with a small amount of it also changes in its dimension may occur. Then high corrosion resistance will be provided by this lead. It will provide you high corrosion resistance and very good lubricating characteristics or lubricating properties will be provided by this lead. And while doing the processing, suppose you want to do the different operations, here you have to remember that its recrystallization temperature is very high. Hence, it is very difficult to perform other operations on it. And its absorbing characteristics, absorbing X-rays or gamma rays, is very high. It easily absorbs the X-rays or gamma rays. Hence, it can be used for manufacturing of the protective sheets. Okay. And its other characteristic is it can easily alloyed with other low melting alloying elements, like this is SB is antimony, then tin, Sn, then silver, arsenic, zinc, and cadmium. These alloying elements can be added in the lead. Now, other properties which is just for your information, this lead or their alloys are completely insoluble. Okay, completely insoluble in different kinds of steels or different kinds of brasses or bronzes, that is copper alloys. Okay, these are completely insoluble in that. Hence, sometimes we are adding the lead to improve the machinability. Why we are adding lead? Because it is completely insoluble and it has globular shape. Hence, it will accelerate the formation of chips. Okay, so that machinability will get improved. Now, we will discuss this lead and tin alloys. Okay, lead and tin alloys. This is the equilibrium diagram for lead and tin alloy. From this equilibrium diagram, it is very much clear that you can identify at this point, okay, at this point, that is 61.9% tin. On this x-axis, weight percentage of tin is plotted. At this particular composition, eutectic transformation is occurring. 61.9% tin, that is SN, eutectic composition transformation is occurring. This is its eutectic composition, and this liquid transforms to mixture of alpha and beta phase, and this transformation occurs at 183 degrees Celsius. 183 degrees Celsius temperature, this eutectic transformation occurs. And easily this lead, we can add other alloying elements like ESP, SN, AG, AS, ZN, CD. Then its general characteristics will be its low melting point, then its very excellent flow characteristics. Now, already I have discussed the properties of lead, that properties will be reflected in this lead and tin alloys. Now, lots of examples are there of this lead and tin alloy. Few examples or few alloys we will discuss here along with their composition and properties. These are lead and tin alloys, that is PB and SN alloys. The first alloy in that is tin man solder or quick solder. Okay, where we are using this alloy for joining of the TV wires of TVs and radios, or different electrical wires are there for joining them. we are using this tin man solders or quick solder. And now this tin man solder or quick solder, it consists of 62% tin and balance amount of lead. Okay, here you can see is dominant element is tin. Okay, then also it will be included in lead and tin alloy only. And here in this tin man solder or quick solder, it solidifies. While solidifying, it solidifies quickly. Okay, from it will get solidified quickly without going in the, I mean, pasty region. That is, without showing liquid solid phase directly from liquid to solid, it will get transferred. And due to this, it is used as a quick solder. Okay, without showing liquid solid phase, quickly it solidifies. Hence, it is used for joining of wires of TVs and radios. Then the second solder is plumber solder. In this plumber solder, it is an alloy of lead and tin only. It is an alloy of lead and tin, which consists of 20 to 40% tin and balance amount of lead. But what is the property of this plumber solder? Okay, this plumber solder will solidify over a range of temperature. Okay, solidification starts at 280 to 250 or 240 degrees Celsius, and it remains in the liquid solid phase, liquid plus solid phase, that is pasty phase. You can say that pasty region will be in this pasty region, or it remains in the pasty form for a longer period of time, because from 280 degrees Celsius, freezing or solidification will start, and it continues up to 183 degrees Celsius. Okay, hence we will get the more time. During this time, it will remain in liquid plus solid phase, and at 183 degrees Celsius, it will solidify. So due to this, the long range of solidification, it will provide time for plumber for wiping the joints. Okay, for making the joints or wiping the joints of lead pipes or different cable sheets, he will that plumber will get time, because these lead tin alloys, they take time for the solidification, and they will remain in liquid plus solid phase. And during this time, you can keep quickly, that plumber can quickly make the wiping of the joints, or you can do the wiping of the joints in different lead pipes or different cable sheets. And the most commonly used plumber solder, its composition is 33% tin and 67% lead. This is most commonly used plumber solder. Okay, and you can use them for making joints in lead pipes and cable sheets. Then the next lead tin alloy is ternary metal. Okay, here this ternary metal, it is an lead tin alloy with 10 to 25% tin and balance amount of lead, and this is used for coating steel sheets. Okay, on the steel sheets we are applying the coating, and that sheets are used for roofing. Then automotive fuel tanks, okay, we are applying one coating inside them, and this coating is made from this ternary metal, which consists of 10 to 25% tin and remaining amount of lead only. Then electrician solder is there. Okay, electrician solder, in that 58% lead will be there and 42% tin is there. Now, what is the property? All common properties will be there for this lead tin alloys. What are the common properties? Low melting point, then high coefficient of thermal expansion, and they will provide a good corrosion resistance, higher corrosion resistance. Then these electrician solders, which contains 42% tin and 58% lead, they are used for joining of electrical instrument wires, and hence depending on their application only, it is termed as electrician solder. So these are different types of lead tin alloys. Okay, lead and tin alloys, which can be used for different applications, and generally they are used for soldering. They are also termed as solders. Okay, solders are nothing but a lead and tin alloys. Then this lead alloy can also be used in the manufacturing, or they can be used as a bearing material. Okay, lead and tin alloy, they can be used as a bearing material. Okay, and that bearing material is known as a white metal alloy, or it is also termed as babbits. Okay, it is also termed as babbits. Okay, if you are having any query, please mention that query in the chat box related to the lead and lead alloys. Okay, this babbit is also a lead alloy, but this babbit can also be manufactured by taking tin as the parent metal, or using the tin based alloys. Okay, this babbit is very important. It is used for manufacturing of the bearings. It is also known as, depending on its color, it has a white color. It will be termed as a white metal alloy. Okay, now we are going to discuss this babbits or white metal alloys. Babbits or white metal alloys. Okay, now these babbits are also known as white metal alloys. Now, these babbits can manufactured. Okay, they can be manufactured by using lead-based alloys, or they can be manufactured by using tin-based alloys. Okay, means lead as an parent metal or base metal, or tin as an parent metal or base metal, with the addition of other alloying elements like copper, cadmium, and arsenic. Okay, and we can use their composition depending on the base metal, the composition or amount of the other alloying element varies, and it is indicated in the tabular form. You can see here, if we are using lead based alloys for manufacturing of the babbits or white metal alloys, its composition will be like this: lead based alloys, that is Pb, in this 1 to 10% tin, 10 to 15% antimony, then 1.5 to 3.5% copper, 1.25 to 1.75% cadmium, and 0.1 to 1% arsenic, and remaining amount will be of lead, balance amount or remaining amount of lead. And if tin based alloy is used, then maximum or base metal will be tin, 1 to 10% will be lead, 5 to 10, 12% antimony, 3 to 5% copper, and arsenic 0 to 0.1% arsenic is added. Okay, these are the different compositions we can use for manufacturing of babettes, either using lead based babettes or tin based babettes. You can manufacture it, or you can use lead based or tin based babettes here with this varying compositions. Now, general properties of these Babbitt's materials or white metal alloys will be like this. Whichever properties are required for use of that material in the bearing application, that properties will be there in this Babbitt's. Okay, so we can highlight that properties. These Babbitt's are hard and wear resistance. Okay, these are hard in nature and wear resistance for a longer period of time. Okay, for a longer period of time, they will show you the high hardness and wear resistance. Then they has these babbits has sufficient load bearing ability at ambient temperatures and at elevated temperatures. Okay, means at lower temperatures as well as at the higher temperature ranges, they carries high amount of load. Then their fatigue resistance, galling resistance, and seizing resistance is very high because they are going to work under different working conditions, and their uh, fatigue may occur or loss of material may take place in the form of galling or seizing. So to avoid this, uh, that Babbitt must have high fatigue resistance, high galling resistance, and high seizing resistance. Then whenever we are using Babbitts, they must have high oil retaining capacity so that they can work under the different loading conditions properly. Then these Babbitts has a very good corrosion resistance, and they also have very good thermal conductivity with medium melting points, and their cost is also low so that we can they can be readily available or they can be easily used. So these are common properties of the Babbitts. Then we will discuss related to the microstructure. Now, in the microstructure, we have discussed that these Babbitts are hard and wear resistance in nature. And why they are hard and wear resistance in nature, that property or that detail or reason behind it, you can get it from their microstructure. If you observe their microstructure, easily you can see cuboid or cube shaped particles are there, and that cuboids are hard in nature, and due to this cuboids only, these Babbitts provide you high hardness and wear resistance. Okay, I will first show you the microstructure. This is the microstructure. This is drawn with the pen and paper, and this is the microstructure which can be easily seen in under the microscope. Okay, these are cuboids of SNSB. Okay, tin and antimony cuboids are there, and due to these cuboids only, high hardness and wear resistance is there or provided by these Babbitts, and remaining black surfaces is copper tin matrix. Okay, copper and tin matrix is there, or copper and lead. If it is a lead based Babbitt, then lead will be there. Then then uh, here you can say the needle-like structure is present, and this needle-like structure is nothing but CuSN complex compounds are there. CuSN hard needles of CuSN or Cu6SN5 or Cu3SN. These are complex compounds, okay, and these can be observed in the form of needles, and they also improve the hardness of these babbits. Okay, the microstructure of babbit consists of hard cuboids or cube-shaped particles of SNSB, that is tin and antimony, in soft matrix of eutectic copper and tin. Then microstructure may consist of hard needles of copper tin complex compounds. Now here you can uh, face one problem. Okay, while manufacturing of this babbit, here we have seen we are adding here copper. Why this copper is added? There is some specific reason behind addition of this copper. Okay, when solidification process takes place, during this solidification, as this tin and SN and SB, they are having very low melting point, and they are having very low melting point, and they are very you can say that lighter. Okay, they are very lighter, and during the solidification process, as they are very lighter, uh, they will get separated and they come on the surface. This SNSB cuboids, they come on the surface and they segregates means they will form a team. They will come together on the top surface, and due to this, what will happen? They will come on the top surface, and only top surface will become hard, and bottom surface of the babbit will become soft due to the segregation of this SNSB cuboid. As they are very lighter, segregation will occur on the top surface, and top surface will become hard, and remaining portion or bottom portion will become soft. Okay, this is occurred due to the gravity segregation. Now to avoid this, we have two options. Either you have to add copper, or you have to use the rapid cooling method. Okay, due to the rapid cooling method, that during the solidification, this SNSB cuboid, and they are not getting enough time to occupy the top surface if you used the rapid cooling rate, or if you add the copper. This copper, what will happen due to addition of copper is copper and SN compounds, they will separated initially, and due to their separation, they will avoid the gravity segregation of SNSB cuboids. Okay, due to this addition of copper, CuSN matrix will be formed, and the segregation means formation of a team, you can say in short word, of this SNSB will be avoided, means they will be separated. Okay, uniform distribution will be obtained due to the addition of the copper. Okay, hence we will get the uniform distribution of these SNSB cuboids, and desired hardness and wear resistance will be uniform, and which will increase the life of that bearing. Okay, in this way, depending on their elements, or depending on the cooling rate, or depending on the addition of the copper, we will get the desired structure. Okay, this is the gravity segregation. Due to this gravity segregation, what is happening? Only top surface will become hard and bottom surface will become soft. To avoid this gravity segregation, copper is added, or a rapid cooling is used. Then, as we have discussed, we can manufacture babbits by using tin as an parent metal, or lead as an parent metal or base metal. Now, this is the comparison chart, or comparison between the tin based babbits and lead based babbits. Now, tin based babbits shows, or they gives more corrosion resistance as compared to lead based babbits. Okay, more corrosion resistance will be provided by tin based babbits, and less corrosion resistance will be provided by lead based babbits. Then similarly, wear resistance is also very high in case of tin based babbets as compared to the lead based babbets. They will provide you less wear resistance. Sufficient corrosion and wear resistance will be provided by lead based babbets, but if you compare them with the tin based babbets, it is less. Then these tin based babbets are higher on the cost side, and lead based babbets are a little bit cheap. And then the tin based babbets, they have more load carrying capacity or more load carrying ability, and these lead based babbets have less load carrying capacity or ability if you compare them with the tin based babbets. So in this way, these tin based babbets will show you more corrosion resistance and more wear resistance along with better load carrying capacity. Now, after discussing the property, composition, properties, their microstructure of these babbets or white metal alloy, we will discuss applications of these babbets. Okay, babbets or white metal alloys. These babbets or white metal alloys, they can be used, okay, lead based babbets and tin based babbets. Okay, lead based babbets can be used for general purpose machineries. Okay, different machineries are there. In that, bearings are manufactured, and these bearings will be used in the general purpose machineries. Okay, and then different machine shops, different machines are there. In that, lead based babbets are used. Then lead based babbets can also be used in farm machinery, cement machinery, different types of conveyors, elevators, then steel mill machinery. Okay, here little bit load is on the moderate side. At that time, lead based babbets can be used. Okay, and then in the lorry diesel engine crankshaft also, we are using the bearings manufactured with the help of this lead based babbets. Then tin based babbets, as they could stand up the high impact loads on the connecting rods and crankshafts. There, if any bearing is used, we can use these tin based babbets. Then high speed and heavy loads will require tin based babbets, as we have discussed in the comparison point. And these tin based babbets have high load carrying capacity. Then whenever high speed and high loads are required, then tin based babbets are used, while lead based babbets are used for low load and low speed carrying applications. Okay, directly you can try to remember in this way. As tin based babbets has high load carrying capacity, they are used for high speed and heavy load applications, and lead based babbets are used for low speed and low load applications. So these are applications of the babbets. Okay, in this way, we have completed these babbets or white metal alloys, or these are, you can say, remember in this way, these are bearing materials. Okay, these are manufactured with the help of lead based or tin based alloys. They are having these properties: high wear resistance, high hardness, and these properties are due to presence of hard cuboids of SNSB. Okay, and remaining matrix will be of copper tin. Some needles of copper tin complex compounds will be there, which are hard in nature. Tin based babbets are more corrosion and wear resistance, having high load carrying capacity. Hence, we can use them for high speed and heavy load applications. And lead based babbets are having little bit less corrosion and wear resistance with low load carrying capacity. Hence, we can use them for low speed and low load applications. In this way, we have completed this babbets part. Okay, if any query is there, you can ask me related to the babbets. Now, after this Babbitts, we will start the nickel. We will discuss the general properties of the nickel element. Then we will discuss different types of the nickel alloys, their composition properties and application. If any query is there, you can put that in the chat box. Okay, if no doubts are there, we will continue now. Now, the next alloys are nickel. Okay, nickel and nickel alloys. Now, before going to start the discussion related to the nickel alloys, we will discuss the common properties of nickel element. Now, as this nickel has FCC crystal structure, face-centered cubic crystal structure, it is soft, malleable, and ductile in nature. Nickel is soft, malleable, and ductile in nature, and it has white color. Okay, this nickel or nickel alloys has white color, and this nickel provide very good resistance to the corrosion and oxidation. Very good corrosion resistance and oxidation resistance, and fairly good electrical conductivity. Okay, lead has less, very poor or less electrical conductivity, but nickel has very good electrical conductivity, fairly good electrical conductivity, and easily this nickel element can be alloyed. Means different alloying elements can be added in this nickel to get different nickel alloys with different or variable properties. Now, generally these nickel alloys, these are used in the production of copper nickel alloys. Okay, these are used in the manufacturing of copper nickel alloys, then high temperature alloys, then permanent magnets, high nickel alloys, and for doing the electroplating they are using the nickel alloys. Okay, because of their very good resistance to corrosion and oxidation, they are used for electroplating operation. Now, the different nickel alloys I have highlighted here, almost 9 to 10 nickel alloys I have listed. and along with their composition properties and applications, I have added them in the different slides. The first nickel alloy is Dura-Nickel. Dura-Nickel. Now, this Dura-Nickel consists of 94% nickel, 4.5% aluminum, with elements like carbon, manganese, iron, sulfur, silicon as an alloying element. Okay, as an alloying element. These are added as an alloying element in very small amount. Now, this Dura-Nickel has high tensile strength and high hardness along with good corrosion resistance. Okay. Now, due to addition of this manganese, iron, carbon, their strength and hardness is improved. And due to presence of nickel, it has very good corrosion resistance. Okay, it has very good corrosion resistance. Now, due to this high tensile strength and high hardness with good corrosion resistance, these Dura-Nickels are used for various applications. Okay, now these Dura-Nickel strips, okay, it can be manufactured in the form of strips. Dura-Nickel strips can be used as laundry clips, then in different jewelry parts, in optical frames, then different instrument parts such as diaphragms, bellows, snap switch, okay, snap switch blades, and in sports field for manufacturing of that fish hooks. For manufacturing of that fish hooks, we can use the Dura-Nickel, then parts of fishing tackles. Sorry. Okay, so these are the applications of this Dura-Nickel. Then this second nickel alloy is Permanickel. Okay, now here this Permanickel is alloy of nickel along with alloying elements like carbon, manganese, iron, sulfur, silicon, copper, titanium, and magnesium in very small amount. Okay. Now it has properties very much similar to the Dura-Nickel only. That is, it has high tensile strength and high hardness, along with good corrosion resistance. And in this Permanickel, it has improved thermal conductivity and electrical conductivity along with some magnetic properties due to addition of the iron. Now, these Permanickels are typically used for manufacturing of electrical contact applications such as, okay, such as from these Permanickel. The third type of these nickel alloys okay, it is Hastelloy D nickel. Okay, Hastelloy D nickel. In this Hastelloy D nickel, alloying elements like silicon up to 10% and copper up to 3% are added, and the remaining amount will be of nickel only. Now, these Hastelloy D nickel will provide you high tensile strength and high hardness with excellent corrosion resistance and improved toughness. Okay, due to addition of this copper, toughness is improved, and these Hastelloy D nickels are used for evaporators, then reaction vessels, different pipelines, and fittings in the chemical industries. Okay, we are using different evaporators, reaction vessels, different pipelines, and fittings in the chemical industry, and there we are using this hastelloy D nickel, which consists of 10% silicon, 3% copper, and remaining amount of nickel, and it has high strength, high hardness, with excellent corrosion resistance, along with very good toughness characteristics. Okay, so this is the hastelloy D nickel. Then after this hastelloy D nickel, and the next is Invar. Okay, it is an alloy. Invar. Okay, it is an iron and nickel alloy which consists of 36% nickel and 64% iron. Now, this we have also seen in this. Sometimes you know that, or it is also known as Invar steel. Okay, already we have discussed this in the Invar steel, but it can be considered as a nickel alloy. Okay, because 36% nickel is there and 64% iron will be there. You can consider it as an Invar steel also, with addition of some other alloying elements. But if only 36% nickel and 64% iron, it is can be considered as a nickel alloy. It has a low coefficient of thermal expansion due to presence of this nickel, and due to this low thermal coefficient of expansion, it can be used for manufacturing of different length standards and different measuring tapes, different instrument parts, then variable condensers, tuning force, and special springs. Okay, as it is having very low coefficient of thermal expansion, different measuring tapes or measuring instruments can be manufactured with the help of this Invar. Then Ilinvar, okay, and this also we have discussed. Its composition will be like this: 36% nickel, 12% chromium, and remaining amount will be of iron. It also has very low coefficient of thermal expansion, and due to addition of chromium, its hardness is very high. Hence, these Ilinvar nickel alloys are used for manufacturing of hair springs, then balance wheels in watches, and precision in the precision instruments where measuring is. Okay, precision instruments are there. In that precision instrument, small parts are there, like watches. Very small parts are there that are manufactured with the help of this Ilinware in different precision instruments. And then nickel, chromium, and iron alloys. Ni, Cr, and Fe alloys. Now this Ni, Cr, and Fe alloys, nickel, chromium, and iron alloys, its composition will be approximately 80% will be nickel, 20% chromium. Okay, this is one example. Then 80% nickel, 20% chromium. Then 60% nickel, 16% chromium, and 24% iron. Okay, so these are different examples of nickel chromium alloys or nickel chromium and iron alloys, and now they are having specific properties or characteristics. Okay, now this nickel chromium, if only nickel and chromium is there, this is termed as nichrome. Okay, this can be termed as nichrome, and related to their properties, they are having high resistance to the oxidation. Okay, high resistance to the oxidation. Hence, these are used. It is used as an electrical element in the different electrical instruments like toaster, hair dryers, hot water heaters, then many other household appliances, okay, toasters, hair dryers, water heaters, then different industrial furnaces. There we are using this nichromes or this nickel chromium iron alloy as an electrical element because they are having high resistance to the oxidation, and they can work they can work at the higher temperature ranges, even at 1000 degrees Celsius also. Okay. And after this nickel chromium, that is nichromes and nickel chromium iron alloys, next alloy is inconel. Okay. Okay. Inconel alloy. These alloys consist of 15% chromium, 8% iron, and remaining amount of nickel. Related to their properties, they are having very high strength and high resistance to corrosion and oxidation. And due to this high strength and high resistance to corrosion and oxidation, these inconels, which contains 15% chromium, 8% iron, and remaining amount of nickel, these are used in the manufacturing of exhaust manifolds of aero engines, then different furnace parts, then different carburizing boxes. Okay, we are performing heating operation in that carburizing boxes. Then different retorts are there, we are using in the chemical labs. Then different thermocouple protection tubes and food processing equipments are there, where high amount of corrosion or oxidation may occur. There we are using this inconel alloys, or this inconel, it is a nickel alloy. And then inconel X. Okay, here other alloying elements, means other than chromium and iron, other alloying elements are also present, like titanium or aluminum are added. And its example composition will be like this: 15% chromium, 8% iron, 2.25 to 2.75% titanium, then 0.4 to 1% aluminum, and balance amount of nickel is present. Okay, this is inconel X, and this inconel X is having very much similar characteristics to the inconel. That is, it has high strength and high resistance to the corrosion and oxidation. And due to this high strength and high resistance to corrosion and oxidation, this inconel X is used for manufacturing of springs. And these springs can be used at elevated temperatures. Um, then these are used in different parts of gas turbines and jet propulsion components or parts. Okay. So this inconel alloy can be used in manufacturing of springs, which can be used at higher temperature ranges, and different components in gas turbines and jet propulsions. Okay. And then the next is permalloys. Okay. Now this is the alloy of nickel and iron, and here iron percentage is lesser, on the lesser side, that is 78%, up to 78% nickel will be there, and remaining amount of iron is present. Now these alloys has very good magnetic properties, due to presence of iron. Then low hysteresis losses are there, and low electrical resistivity. Now, low historical losses are there means, what are the hysteresis losses are there. Hysteresis losses are low. What is the meaning of the hysteresis losses? During the continuous magnetization and demagnetization process, energy is lost in the form of heat. Okay, if you are doing continuous magnetization of a material and demagnetization also, simultaneously you are doing magnetization demagnetization process, during this loss of energy will occur in the form of heat, and this will be termed as hysteresis loss. And this hysteresis loss is very less in the permalloys. Okay, they have very good magnetic properties and less hysteresis loss, and very low electrical resistivity. And due to these properties, this permalloy, which consists of 78% nickel and remaining amount of iron, these are used. Okay, permalloy parts are used as loading coils in electrical communication circuits. Okay, whichever loading coils are there in electrical communication circuits, that coils, loading coils are manufactured from this permalloys. Then the next, or this is the last nickel alloy which I have added in these slides, is Alnico. Okay, now this Alnico, it consists of 8 to 12% aluminum, 14 to 28% nickel, 5 to 35% cobalt, okay, with a small amount of iron. Okay, now sometimes you can say that here also the percentage of nickel is less as compared to the iron, but we are considering it as an nickel alloy because it is having very much higher impact on the properties. Now this Alnico has a very good magnetic properties. Okay, now in short, it is termed as, this Alnico is termed as aluminum, nickel, cobalt and iron alloy. Okay, I have added this in the nickel alloy list, but it is considered as aluminum, nickel, cobalt and iron alloy. It has very good magnetic properties, and due to these very high or very better magnetic properties, these alnicos are used in the manufacturing of permanent magnets in the motors, generators, radio speakers, or telephones, microphones, or galvanometers. Okay, some permanent magnets we are using in different motors, generators, radio speakers, telephones, microphones, or galvanometers. That permanent magnets are manufactured from this Alnico material. And this Alnico, you can consider it as an aluminum, nickel, cobalt, and iron alloy. Okay, it has very good magnetic properties, and due to that magnetic properties, it is used for manufacturing of permanent magnets, and that permanent magnets can be considered in the different motors, generators, radio speakers. Okay, you can use them. So this nickel alloys are also completed now. Okay, now I will summarize this session. If you have any query, you can ask me. In this today's session, we have completed aluminum. We have started with the aluminum and its alloys. In that, we have discussed properties of aluminum and general applications of the aluminum. Then aluminum silicon alloy we have discussed along with its equilibrium diagram and modification treatment. Then different aluminum silicon alloys, aluminum silicon copper alloys, aluminum silicon copper magnesium alloys, and aluminum magnesium alloy, which are known as magnesium, we have discussed with their composition properties and application. And we have discussed aluminum copper alloys, Y alloys, Hinduminiums. These are different aluminum alloys we have discussed with composition properties and applications. And then we have discussed the lead alloys. Okay, in that lead, we have discussed about lead and tin equilibrium diagram and lead tin alloys like tin man solder or quick solder, then plumber solder, electrician solder, and turney metal. And after this, we have discussed the Babbitt's. Okay, before discussing nickel alloys, we have discussed Babbitt's or white metal alloys. In that, um, we have learned that these Babbitt's can be manufactured with the help of lead-based alloy or tin-based alloy with alloying elements like copper, cadmium, and arsenic. This copper is added to avoid the gravity segregation to get the uniform hardness and wear resistance throughout the life of that bearing. Then we have discussed the properties of these Babbitt's along with their microstructure and differentiating points between tin-based and lead-based Babbitt's. along with the applications of Babbitt's. And then after the Babbitt's or white metal alloys, we have discussed this properties of nickel element and that properties of nickel alloys. And in that we have discussed some nickel alloys like duranickel, permanickel, hastelloid nickel, then invar, ilinvar, nichromes, that is NiCr alloys or NiCr Fe alloys, in Inconel and Inconel X permalloys and Alnico, along with their different composition properties and applications. We have completed this part. Now the remaining part, that is the composite material and nanomaterial and precipitation hardening, that we will discuss in the next session. If any doubt is there, please mention that doubt in the chat box. Okay, almost 80% chapter is completed. I have completed this 80% chapter. Only 2 points are left: composite material, nanomaterials, and steps in the precipitation hardening. Okay, that we will discuss in the next session. Okay, now if you are not having any doubt, you can leave the session by entering your roll number in the chat box. Thank you. Thank you for attending this session.